Alright, fuel is done. Cash advance is done. We better get going. We gotta wait for this horseback to leave, otherwise we're never gonna make it around. We're not gonna make it around a tanker and a horseback. It does look like he's putting his seatbelt on, so that's a good sign. Now whether he's gonna leave right away, I have no idea. Yeah, he just released his brake, so we're going. We're gonna go, we're gonna go, we're gonna go, 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 go. It's a busy, busy night. Okay, right now we have 3 hours and 23 minutes remaining to drive. I really wish I could make it on the east side of Indianapolis, but I doubt it. I wish I could make it to, what is that, Greenfield? There's a Pilot and a McDonald with huge truck parking. So oh boy, we're gonna be here a while. Speedco Lube and Tires. Look at the size of that pothole. We barely made it through there. On the east side, anyway. Faucet, Missouri. Faucet, Missouri, that's on Interstate 70. West of St. Louis, isn't it? I remember delivering over there somewhere. Now, I can't guarantee you that's what I'm thinking. What I'm saying is it's the same thing. Sometimes I think of a certain building in a certain street, but it's in a different state. You know, I've been driving for so long that I sometimes listen to my family and or ordinary non-commercial drivers out there and see what they feel, what they view about truck drivers, and because I don't remember that anymore, you know. I know there's a certain when four-wheelers think of truck drivers or the trucking, and sometimes it's hard for me to relate that. Okay, the reason I was asking this driver Hirschback here if he knew or knows Dan Wallace is, Dan Wallace used to be my boss. I used to work for All American Transport out of Francis Creek, Wisconsin, just about 10 miles north of Manitowoc, Wisconsin. He used to be the terminal manager there. I worked for him for a few years, and then he had his own truck running within the company. Pretty soon he ran into a conflict of interest within the company. So what he did is he pulled out all his truck, started his own company. And I tell you what, more than 10 or 15 people, drivers from All American Transport quit in one day. And Dan only had about 5 trucks. Could you imagine a truck of 50, maybe 10 drivers quit in one day? 10, 15. Man, that had to hurt so bad. So anyway, about 10 or 15 of us drivers quit, followed Dan. Dan only had 5 trucks, and there wasn't enough truck to go around. And I don't know how Dan did it, but less than a month he had about 10 more trucks, and boy did he grew. Holy smokies, I think he went up to about 30 trucks at the height of his company. That was one of my earliest trucking career, I suppose. Then I would work for Dan for about, Dan's company became All American Transport. We were based out of downtown Manitowoc, Wisconsin. I would work for Dan for about 8-9 months, and I'd quit. I'd stay home, go home to the Philippines. Then I get, kind of road sick. Go back out and drive again. It was just, I guess looking at back now, I did it just for fun. Then I worked for Dan, and then I think it was then my dad died, and that's everything. That's when everything got turned off. Financially anyway, so I had to grow up real fast. And I think I quit Dan again, and I moved down to Houston, Texas. Worked for JB Hunt for about 8 months again. Over the road. 8 months later, came back to Wisconsin, worked for Dan until he sold the company to Well Companies. And so Nordic Express became engulfed by Well Companies. And one day I came in and Dan says, "Hey John, meet our new boss." I said, "What do you mean our new boss? You're my boss." And he says, "Nope, I just sold the company 5 minutes ago." Then he recommended me to the owner of Well Companies and put some high remarks on my behalf. Well, then me and Dan worked for well companies. Actually, I worked for well companies longer than Dan did. I don't know what happened to Dan. I think he quit or some kind of a thing, but he moved out to Hirschbach out of Iowa, Dodge City, Iowa, I think it is, or not sure. But that, from what I understand, that's where he's working right now. He works over there at Hirschbach as a general manager. At the time when I was working for Dan, I was strictly a company driver, and Dan had me do his most precious gravy run, they call it. This was prior to 9/11, and I tell you what, that load paid about $4 a mile. It started out at Seymour, Wisconsin. First drop would be okay, I would pick it up Friday afternoon in Seymour, Wisconsin. Then I would go home in Sheboygan. Then I would stay home until early Saturday. I would leave Saturday and be in Rochester, New York by Sunday night, I think it is. Sunday noon, I guess, I think it was. That was the first drop. Second drop would be in Buffalo or Rochester. Rochester, New York. And then all the way to Boston to New Hampshire to, I think there were about 2 or 3 Boston drops. I would never be below 5 drops, and I would end up sometimes with about 10 drops. And the more drops, the more money I made. Well, Dan did, anyway. So anyway, when I was working for Dan, he had me do his most precious load until he sold the company. And at that time, I was working for a friend of mine, leased to Dan. All said and done, this friend of mine, Ricardo, suggested I should buy his truck and be an owner-operator. I said, I don't know anything about being an owner-operator. So I asked Dan, I said, Dan, what do you think? He says, I'll tell you what, buy that truck and I'll give you this load dedicated. And so I bought the truck, became an owner-operator with well companies. Oh man, I think the first year I grossed $110,000 gross. That was crazy. No, 210 actually. That was crazy. That was when I was able to buy that house. And then I worked for, well, 12, 13 years. Owner operator and company driver. But according to the plaque up there, I only worked for 5 years. That's because they don't consider you working there as an owner operator. Well, that's all I got, so I'll catch you guys a little later. As always, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. And once again, if you have the irresistible urge to press the dislike button, make sure you press it twice. Have a good and godly day. Peace.